That's true.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Finance Junkies. We've got a lot to talk about. I hope everyone's having a great day.
Hope everybody enjoyed their Bluey commercial before this thing went live.
Dude, did you guys check out Bluey? How good
No,
is
I didn't
Bluey?
check out Bluey.
I did. It's basically Peppa Pig, but with a blue girl.
Dude, it's awesome. Bluey's gonna blow up one day. You'll see.
Are you guys at all interested in scented candles by any chance?
No, I hate
Vanilla
scented
chai?
candles. I freaking hate candles, dude.
You hate candles? Why do you hate candles?
I hate candles. I don't know. I just don't like them, dude. I'm not a fan.
There is something kind of yucky about them. Like if you have too many of them in your house.
Yucky about candles? They're fucking
It's
candles.
something kind of creepy about that, but it ruins your ruins your ceiling and your paint. Look, I have a kind of a horror story with that. I lived next door to this woman when I lived in Brooklyn. I lived next door to this woman who was like a real big, I guess she was a Christian Spanish lady who had like a shrine to like Jesus Christ in one of her closets, and there was probably 100 candles in there, and she would burn them, and you saw all of the wax that was like just caking all the walls from the years and years of the candles. Bro, one day she set the entire building on fire with one of those candles. The whole, like, I was in my apartment working, and we smelled smoke. It was crazy, and it was like one of those moments, like, just grab, I grabbed my girl at the time, my 2 cats, and we just ran out, and her whole apartment burned down. So I kind of have a thing with candles. I'm like, it's a little dangerous, man.
Interesting. Wow, I didn't know that. I love candles. I've had them since college. They're scented, vanilla chai. I'm like, this smells good. It's great. I love it. It's like little fun.
All of those, right? So those girls, your friends, as you're gaming them, you got.
No, but seriously, it worked, bro. You have a nice smelling room. Look, I paid $500
That's true.
for a tiny room, bro. So when they came in the room, it was very tiny. So it needed to be nice and like clean.
Yeah, not smell like underarm.
Exactly. All right, so let's get into it. Chris, you tweeted some stuff today about inflation. I'm bringing it up. What are your latest thoughts right before we get CPI data tomorrow?
I think we are going to see a big movement down in headline CPI, which is probably going to be very bullish for the market, because I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that. And it's not just me saying that. If you look at the Cleveland Fed, their nowcast, it's pretty low. JP Morgan came out with a low estimate. Goldman Sachs, same thing. I think we're starting to see some massive gains on a deflationary trend. So I think a lot of the stuff that was lagging is starting to finally catch up and show up in the numbers. The 2 that I put specifically out, if you want to click on each one. So the first one is the Manheim used car index. So you can see like used cars, like last year, they were just crazy, man. Like because of all the supply chain issues, people could not get their hands on a used car, and it's bad because at that point, everything was getting bid up. This year, you can see it drop off precipitously, like crazy amount, right? It's actually in the negative territories. And this is something that Cathie Wood had kind of said quite a few times, actually.
Chris, can you give us the TLDR on why used vehicles and their price index is relevant for overall inflation?
Because it shows a demand, right? People need to use cars to get from place to place.
Well, I think he's asking why cars specifically are.
Or why used cars? Why used cars? Like why?
Because everyone needs cars. Everyone buys used cars. Everyone uses used cars too. Especially even from a resale perspective, used cars are a good indicator of like the health of the demand for that specific commodity, which everyone needs to at one point have, right? So that's one. And go to the other one, which is probably more relevant. It's actually, could you go to Trueflation and go to the housing site? Because this one may not be easy to see, actually. Or let me share my screen, actually. Or go to housing. Okay, and then just blow that whole thing up. Okay, so you can see here, these are the different things with housing, like different sectors within the housing general market. So you can see the purple line that's really light. That's actually the rented dwellings. So
what does that mean? What does that mean?
That means that like if you were paying rent, this is what it would be. This is the inflation rate for like for rental properties.
So one of the things is that percent on the left side, 12%.
Yeah, year over year. So you can see the drop is like crazy, like a year
Wow.
over year drop.
That's why when I rented my apartment in July last year, the rent was way higher than I would imagine now, right?
But to be
Well,
fair though, there was
yeah.
a lot more people in transit last year, and every time people leave, there's always a chance to jack up the rents.
Right. But also at the time, there was just a lot of inflation. Right now, you're starting to see a lot of price cuts in rent from what I'm seeing. Like you're seeing, like, I also posted underneath that some rental markets that are seeing declines year over year compared to what they were last year, the same time. So rents is one thing. And you can even see the price of housing, like the price of homes, the rate of change year over year has come down significantly. So now it's actually down to like 3 point something. Go all the way to July, so you can see it's around 3.6, which is below what currently
And this
the
this
yeah. Go ahead.
3.6 means that houses cost 3.6% less than they did.
No. They cost 3.6% more than last year. Remember, it's year over year, right?
Okay.
But the thing is, when you're looking at CPI, you're looking for a trend of year over year data. So last year they were really expensive. This year they're not as expensive. The rate of change has come down significantly. So last year it was almost 16% higher than 2021. Now we're seeing in 2022 that they're only 3% or 3.6% higher. And actually it could fall below that and go into the negative territory if the predictions that I have come true. But we'll see about that. But yeah,
Oh yeah, I saw
essentially,
that.
yeah.
You made like an actual prediction. Like I'm calling this one.
Yeah, I think we are going to see a couple of things. Number one, housing is going to underperform the market for the next 10 years. And so there's quite a few reasons for that. I think number one, we're seeing a lot of inventory starting to kind of finally come into the market from people who were Airbnb, but now have gotten pretty much in a position where they're not making as much money in terms of revenue, so they can't support the underlying business in certain regions. Not every region, in certain regions. Over Airbnbs were just overbought, and then there's also a lot of legislative changes across the country to limit the amount of Airbnbs in specific cities. A good example of this one is like in Dallas. Dallas actually banned short-term rentals, like completely in city limits.
What do you mean
So
short-term rentals? How do they
Bring up Ho Sung's comment at 7:06 while Chris is talking.
yeah. So basically, before you could just take a house, buy it, put it on Airbnb, and there you go. You just run the Airbnb like normal, like you had. A lot of cities, they're seeing that there's an issue with the housing crisis. So what are they doing? They're saying, no, from a legislative standpoint, we have neighbors complaining of people utilizing Airbnbs for partying. We've got an issue with a housing shortage supply. So a lot of local community boards and cities are taking a hard stance against it, saying, look, we are going to implement certain rules around short-term rentals, whether you do Everbo, you do Airbnb, or any other third-party service, where you are kind of like regulated. So in certain things, like in Dallas says you can't do short-term rentals, like you can't do in residential areas. So if you have like a single-family residential zoning, you can't do Airbnb. Atlanta, where I am, they went ahead and they did something where you can't do one Airbnb and then another one that's 2,000 feet near it. So basically, you would limit it, and you have to get a license for every Airbnb that you have. And you can't, your primary residence has to be within the city limits of Atlanta, because that is what was happening, where you had all these people buying up, out of state, basically buying up houses using cheap money from during the lower times, and then putting everything on Airbnb. And so what you're doing is you're sucking out supply from people who actually need housing long term. So that was really bad. And during COVID, everyone was, working from home and stuff. So Airbnb kind of just blew up a little bit. So it's kind of nuts.
This is good for inflation coming down if Dallas does this, is what you're saying.
Well, not just Dallas. I'm saying all around the country, you're starting to see regulations come up to limit the amount of Airbnbs that are coming. So that's one thing. The other thing is, let me show this also.
But there's got to be some legality issues with that. I'm sorry, like there's got to be some sort of legality issues. That like the same sort of thing happened in New York City when they were trying to stop Ubers and the Ubers were fighting with the taxi cabs. Like at a certain point, the free market, you should be allowed to do whatever it is you want to do with your house. Like having parties is a different story, but renting it out and having it as a business. Like I know out here in California, when COVID happened, they actually changed the rules about ADUs so that you would make it easier to have a second property on your property. They would even give it a different address so that you could house people or potentially rent it out. So I just don't know that can last forever. Like maybe it's some sort of temporary ordinance. I could see that, but that can't possibly be like the new normal where you
No,
just that's attacking companies like Airbnb. I mean, that's actually
which is good. That's normal.
Business.
That's how cities are going to have to operate, because there's a certain level of public good that comes from. There are literally towns right now and cities that have been turned into Airbnbs to the point where local residents can't even find a place to live anymore, and the rents have gone through the roof. So if you have
you have BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, weren't they buying up entire fucking zip codes, dude, and turning them into single family rentals?
I am glad that you brought that up, Carlos, because that is the next point that I was going to make. You're starting to see a lot of those same companies starting to unload housing on the market as well, because now the value proposition isn't making sense. But you got a little bit ahead, so let me show my screen real quick, and then we'll follow.
You have data on that? Oh shit!
Yeah.
Okay, I want to check that out.
Okay, so right here, this is another thing. Share the screen, Amit. Okay, so this right here is new privately owned housing under construction. Okay, so this is multifamily more than that. What do you see here?
I see a chart going up to the right.
Now, how far up do you see this? This is crazy amount. We are building more homes right now in May 2023 than the last time, which was literally like 3 decades ago.
1975, bro.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
So
this is new privately owned housing units under construction or units in buildings.
So multifamily housing.
Multifamily housing, but this is under construction. This is being built right now. That is
owned.
Now, privately owned meaning private individuals, or do companies like BlackRock qualify?
No, it's just not. There's a myriad of things. Whether you're a housing developer, your PE fund, whatever. You can even be an individual building a new home. That's not. I mean, a new multifamily. That's not a. It's not specific. It just means that this is not governmental related. That's all. Okay.
So there's a lot of homes being built right now.
A lot. So you can see after the 08 crisis, we of course had a big drawdown because housing was not necessarily appealing at the time. But then you can see that things started to kind of go to normal. And remember, this is with population starting to increase as well. So this is not like a huge deal up until this point right here. And you can see here, it's just skyrocketed at this point.
978,000 homes per month.
Units, not homes. Yeah. Sorry.
You know what I don't see on the chart? What I don't see on the chart is a mean.
What do you mean?
Like I don't see a mean to calculate whether it's up or down from some mean.
Like, you mean like a flat line like this?
Yeah, you're not going to see that. You're see a flat line. That's like, okay,
not
this is
really
mean based on population.
Not really, because remember, the housing markets have ebbs and flows into them. Where remember, when there's undersupply, people build houses because now they know that they can get more value for them. When there's
what was going on in 94? What was going on in 94?
Madonna was releasing Like a Virgin, bro.
No. So this right here, this drawdown from 1986 all the way down here, this was a huge recession. If I even put up a Twitter message that showed that the growth rate of housing. Let me see if I can find it. 1 second.
It was a couple days ago, or it was.
Yeah, let me just share this.
It was that one about the Kager calculator, that one?
Yes. Okay, if you want to pull that up. So basically, housing actually was one of the pretty much performed very similar to inflation. So if you calculate this right here, you can see the median sales price of homes went from 136,000 or 126,000 all the way to 2000. It was at like 69,000 at the end, right? Or it's 165,000. But if you did it on a Kager basis, on a total return basis, the prices only went up 2.7% year over year for the last 10 years, right? Which means that if you had put your money into something like the S&P 500, that will return a yield of 18%. Housing only gave you 2.7%, right? So in terms of housing growth, so people think that, oh, housing only goes up. Yeah, I agree, housing only goes up. The question is, does housing go up beyond what inflation is, right? And that's the key. So right now, if you looked at the inflation during that time, it was around 2.65, 2.75%. And there was one more slide on the same tweet, Amit. If you look down, the rent did the same exact thing. Rent grew at 2.6% per year for the entire period as well. So this is where things were more manageable. So this is the price of the median rental prices in the U.S. in the city average wise. So you can see this is an index. This is not the actual dollar amounts, by the way. But basically, you can see that the growth was the same thing, where it was only about 2.69% year over year for most rented dwellings, which is right, which is what it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to jack up rents like crazy and expect like every year for rent to grow at 10% and think that people should be able to afford that. Yeah. I mean, unless you have an area that went from complete shit to really high class stuff, which happens, you're not going to see growth like that. Like you can see that in Silicon Valley, where Silicon Valley 20 years ago or even 30 years ago was much, much more affordable. And then you had all these big tech companies opening their campuses there. And what happened? The real estate market went crazy, right?
Chris, what was your point of bringing up this data? What is your comparison to right now?
He was going to say that Palantir is going to the moon, because I know we're going to bring it back to fucking Palantir.
What I'm trying to say is housing has been on a tear the last couple of years, primarily because of a lot of legislation that came around. One, COVID restrictions around housing moratoriums where people weren't allowed to evict, right? So you had a lot of people just staying there. The other thing was you had mortgage rates that were so far into the negative not negative, but in a low territory that people could afford to warehouse houses for a long period of time, because alternatively they weren't going to be able to get any money outside of that investment with a fixed return anywhere else. So think of it as you're a retiree. You have 5 houses, and every year you're trying to rent the houses out. You get a little bit of money, right? Imagine now instead you could take that money, put it into a 5-year treasury or a 10-year treasury and get 4-5% return on that money, but you have nothing to do. You have no work to do at all, right? Those are the kinds of things. Alternatively, people were bottom feeding by going into the housing market, trying to become real estate millionaires, leverage themselves, whatever. I don't really care. It's just a thing that people were doing, driving towards. Right now, with higher interest rates.
You're saying that, okay, so you're saying that people are finding, because there's 2 ways that you make money on a property. It's not just the rental income, but it's also the appreciation on it. You're saying that people are finding that the money invested in the market would give a greater return than the appreciation plus what the rental was with zero effort.
No. So rental, you're still going to be making more money if you were actually trying to run it like a business, where you had to actually get like renters and then leverage, and then use leverage to get a loan, and then use the rent and then raise the rent. You still make out more money doing the rental thing. But remember, with rentals, you have to put in work and you have to put in effort, right? So that's the key right there. A lot of people think that just owning a rental is like just you own the rental and you can just chill and you don't have to do anything. No, you have to deal with tenancy issues. You have to deal with property taxes. You have to deal with replacement costs. Like houses are not built to just be an infinite item. Like this is a depreciating item that you have to put some money back into, right? Now, the key that I'm just trying to make is that the appetite for housing is not as high as people think when it comes to the pricing part. Right now, the unaffordability is at like one of the all-time highs. So people
which is good for inflation, right? Which is good for inflation.
Which is not good. Technically, it's not. Well, technically, it's not good for inflation, right? Because if you have unaffordability, that means that people are struggling, right? People are not being able to even like spend any additional money. So yes, in theory, it does make sense. Like, oh, there's more, but that just means that the money is being piled somewhere else rather than being distributed evenly throughout the economy. What you're seeing is income inequality happen with that. So right now, imagine right now, there's people that own 10 Airbnbs or 100 Airbnbs, right? That money is now, instead of being pooled equally among the consumers and it's actually raising the middle class higher, you have 1 or 2 people gaining all of that equity equity profit. Now, yes, I understand that the theory around free market
They're taking
capitalism.
all the risk, and
Totally
if
for
they're
it.
leverage, then it becomes a house of cards that could easily collapse on them. That's a lot of risk.
Exactly.
You got 10 properties.
Exactly.
It's a lot.
Exactly. That's the point that I'm trying to make too, because a lot of times I saw this one girl on what is that thing called, on TikTok in Atlanta. She has 100 Airbnbs and she's 21 years old. She started at 19, basically just buying one Airbnb, using the proceeds to leverage, buy another home, using cash flow to those DCR loans. And again, keep doing the same thing over and over. And in 2.5 years, she's amassed 100 Airbnbs. Okay.
And your argument
now,
is that's gonna be a house of cards that falls.
Well, it is, because if the legislation comes in and says you can't have more than 1 or 2 Airbnbs, what are you going to do then from a legislative standpoint? There were people doing the same thing with, there were companies doing the same thing with Uber in certain areas too, where they were just buying a whole bunch of cars, getting a whole bunch of drivers, and saying, oh, I'm a rental company, but not having to do the licensing on the taxi side. And so it's a weird thing where legislation comes in to kind of protect the average consumer, because you don't want a situation where you have almost like a feudal system back in the day where you had one guy own a whole swath of land and everyone else just pretty much worked to feed this one guy. Like, we don't want modern.
Do you think that problem is so entrenched in the country from an Airbnb perspective, or you think it's in these isolated areas here and there, but it's not like a massive risk to Airbnb?
Well, I mean, it depends on which side of the equation you're on, right? If you're a homeowner, I'm sure that you don't want to lose equity. You don't want the prices of homes to come down. If you could, you would want them to go up 20% every year, right? Because you're a homeowner. But if you're a renter, if you're a young person, if you're in your early 20s, you're trying to break into the housing market, you're trying to do everything right, you're trying to save money, work your ass off, and every year you think that you're about to buy a home and the price goes up. I mean, do you think that's a way that you want to have a sustainable economy? Where you literally have... Huh?
Right, but this is the argument that we make in several other industries. Real estate is no different. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right,
like, we make the argument that the middle class is getting crushed all the time. Like, that was the decision that I had to make in 2017. I could rent for one more year, and I started looking back historically at the prices, and I said to myself, this house that I'm looking at right now, the one I'm living in, I said it's going to be $100,000 more next year. And then I started running the numbers, and I was like, I probably can't afford this house in a year. And I didn't even realize COVID was going to happen. Now it's doubled in value, right? And I will certainly not be able to afford this house. But but I took that risk, and I've been in the house for a few years, and even if I didn't touch it from what the listing was, I deserve that. And if there's people that have that capital, it's like, what do you think people are going to do when they make a lot of money in markets?
Now, what they're going to do. Now, Carlos, let's say it was an individual, but let's say it was a company like BlackRock and Blackstone who literally bought up everything and right now are just sitting on all this real estate, right? That are single family homes.
Which is what they were doing.
Right. And which is what they have right now, right? Do you think it's fair that one company is basically just feeding off of the equity of everyone around, and every year just raising the rents, telling people, listen, if you don't pay higher rent, get the fuck out because I can get more people? You think that's fair?
Well, there comes a certain point where the market can't sustain the rents. There comes a point where you run out of buyers, right?
That is the exact thing that I'm talking about right now, because that is where right now, with all the new inventory coming on, right? Prices of rents is going down. So all these asset managers now, they're stuck. They are going, if you have a rental that you're making money cash flow wise, let's say $2,000, and the price of that rental, because it's a single family, if that rental goes down to, let's say, $1,700, $300 price
times 1,000 properties, it's a lot of money.
And then multiply that your property taxes in most localities are going up. The cost of actually taking care of the properties is going higher,
or it's the same, right?
It's the same. The thing is, your capital is not going to be coming from 30-year mortgages. Most of their capital is coming from corporate debt right now, which right now is yielding 8.5% to almost 10%.
But
so
here's
the value.
I'm sorry, because I just want, before you move on to this point, but here's the thing: they were buying these properties because money was cheap, and they were buying these properties before the values of these properties went up. So they're sitting on a fuck ton of equity. At a certain point, even if it's coming down, like my house is never going to be what it was when I bought it again. right before COVID. So they're already sitting pretty. Yeah, they're not making as much money, but they're certainly not losing money on these properties, dude.
But that's the whole point that I'm trying to make. Now they're actually selling these properties because they still had shareholders at the time. They still did share buybacks. They still paid dividends. So it's not like they were just pooling that cash and sitting on the cash, right? So as an investment, they're actually on the other side of it, where they're actually selling now because the debt that they have is going on the other side of it. So let me just show you right here.
Well, that is actually one of the benefits of having massive institutions buying up a lot of properties, is that, for example, like a homeowner, like you were saying, one person that has, say, 10 homes, 15 homes would not, or someone that bought a home at a low interest rate would not want to get out of that now because they need to buy another home to live in. If they're all of your investment properties, you don't have that same consideration about needing to flip the home and then buy into a market that's a lot higher. So that's something that does kind of squeeze the big boys out of the market and get those homes available to other people. But still, the net is less homes than what would have been around if they weren't just buying everything up.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like,
we get a bidding war too, you know,
yeah,
we all cash.
Yeah, but that's the key, right? That we don't want that. We want to have people actually own their homes, build equity in their neighborhoods, and actually take care of their neighborhoods, take care of their homes. Like, this corporate landlord takeover of housing was probably one of the worst things that could happen to the economy, because, like I said, now you have all this capital that's being pooled into one or two companies, or not even two, but there's plenty of companies, but it's being pooled into like a limited set of people. So now, instead of our population having some level of upward mobility where they're buying home, they're actually going from rental to actually owning and actually generating that long-term wealth. Instead, you have like that concentration of wealth only going to a certain group of people.
But Chris, if this does happen, if this housing thing does happen, that is ultimately good for the economy, because that means the Fed will have to lower rates so that people can afford homes again, right? So that's theoretically.
Well, so my theory on that is that we're going to see two things happen. As interest rates go down, more inventory is going to come on the market, and we're actually going to see a housing correction. I know that's not a popular thing to say, because the theory right now is housing is always going to go up no matter what. But my thing is, I'm looking at it from an inventory perspective, where all that additional inventory, when interest rates come down, is going to be coming into the market, and now houses are going to be sitting on the market for a longer period of time, and at that point, that supply and demand dynamic ends up flipping, and the prices of homes actually start coming down.
Let me ask you a couple of questions.
All right, here we go, Vitaly.
I've listened to enough at this point. A couple of questions. No, I want to know Chris's point of view, because I don't think he's giving the full story. So, okay, what happens in New York? What happens to the two family that are regular investors, regular mom and pops buy the two families, not BlackRock?
So
what happens to those two families? Are you telling me they're going to flood the market?
So this is what I'm trying to say, that it's going to be region specific. There have been a lot of regions.
So is it New York or not?
It's not probably going to be New York.
So it's not going to be New York. Okay, is it New Jersey?
Maybe some parts of New Jersey.
Maybe New Jersey, Florida.
Yeah. Probably, yes. That was a heavy investor area. So there was a lot of people flooding into that area.
California, besides San Francisco.
Yeah, it's already happening in California.
So you're saying it's not necessarily in the densely populated cities, it's more in the rural areas that these single family homes were bought up?
No, so it depends on the market, right? So Atlanta, that area, a lot of places, a lot of like corporate landlords came in. Nashville, a lot of corporate landlords came in.
What did they buy? So I'm curious, what did they actually buy?
Single family homes. They bought single family. They didn't buy multifamily.
So you're saying we're going to have a flood of single family homes coming onto the market. And what does that mean?
That means the price of single family homes is going to come down.
Okay. So let's pick Atlanta, since you like Atlanta and you live around there. So what is it coming down? In Atlanta, you're talking about the city, right? Around the city, the suburbs.
Yep.
What is it going down? 50%? When do I get in? I need to know when I need to buy.
I don't know.
30%?
I don't know. I have no
clue.
clue.
We're waiting for this correction. What am I waiting for? Give me something. Am I waiting for 10%?
Listen,
waiting for
this is one of those things that I don't have a crystal ball. Okay, I don't have a crystal ball that's going to tell you what the drop is going to be.
You're just throwing something out there that there's going to be correction. Big deal. So 10% goes down, 20% goes down. Big deal.
but the point is, he's still right. If there's a correction,
It's corrections all the time.
No. But here. If I understand it correctly, distilling what I think Vitali's getting at is, okay, you've got this tremendous amount of buying pressure, people that want to buy, and there's no inventory. So even if the prices come down, right, on the market, all these people, are they going to flood to buy it when you're not competing with BlackRock, who's going to buy it all cash? You have a lot of buyers for the same home. The prices still go up. It might. Who cares what the listing price is? It only matters what it sells for.
And if it dips 10%, 20%, I mean, is that a massive real estate correction where my house doubled in the last couple of years?
Let me explain. This is
my stocks dipped.
This is all related to inflation, 90%. Right? If you're talking about inflation, a decline in home prices year over year means we're headed into deflation, right? Even flat growth means that you're going to see deflationary trends. That's what I'm saying. In terms of housing, I'm sure that housing will eventually recover anyway, because that's just how it is. God doesn't make any more land. We all know that. The problem is, if you bought at the top, that's not good, right? That's what I'm trying to make right now. I'm not trying to say this whole argument here that I'm trying to make is not necessarily around real estate. It's around inflation and where we're headed from a shelter standpoint. We cannot have that sustained level of doubling that you had last year, Vitaly. Like you said, in the last 5 years, the house of your home doubled, right? Imagine right now. Do you think it's going to, another 5 years, another double? You know,
actually, I'll give you an exact stat. What happened? So 2017, I bought it for $380, my house, which I thought was actually expensive back in the day.
Well, you bought your house in 2017 too?
Yeah.
Oh shit. So did I.
I'm talking about the current
dollhouse.
This guy don't moved in shit.
He's like, I bought
380. I got mine for 420.
I thought it was expensive at 380. I was like, all right. I made some deals. It was actually 400. I knocked off 20 grand. Whatever.
Wait, how'd you knock off the 20 grand? What negotiation did you suck his?
Oh, you always negotiate. Like so, the roof is not in perfect shape. The chimney is not perfect. The garage doors don't look great. Whatever.
You pay someone to get an inspection when you go to get a home.
You pay.
By the way, did you use an agent to do the deal, or you?
Yeah. So this was a conventional real estate transaction.
Okay.
In fact, that's mostly what I do. I don't go shopping for like foreclosures or anything like that.
Okay.
But so what happened? 380. Okay. Now it's at 750, somewhere around there. Okay. So basically a double, right? Almost around there. And so what are you saying? Are you saying it's going down back to the 450? So 500,000.
I don't know. It's going to depend on your region.
The problem,
I think Chris is saying it's not going to 1.5 million. I think that's.
Oh, I don't. I agree with you. It's not going to. It's not going to double again.
Unless you get another pool or something.
But the issue is, okay, so you have people now looking for houses. They're waiting for some correction, and then as soon as they get it, like it could happen, they get their 10, 15% correction, 20% even. They're not going to buy the house. That's what's going to happen. They're waiting for the bigger correction. They're waiting for the crash, the market crash in real estate. And that's not going to happen. So anybody waiting right now will never buy the house because they're always waiting for some event to happen.
You know what, though, Vitaly? That's most people. I know people that for 10 years have been saying they want to buy a house and it's going to be cheaper and I'm waiting for this. 10 years they've been saying this.
And no one should buy it at 7%.
They're paying $30,000, $40,000 a year in rent and paying all this money in their cars. That's what a lot of the mentality is.
But isn't it not a good time to buy because of the interest rates? Like, why would you?
No, now is the time to buy.
At 7%, it's good.
Yes, I'll tell you why. I already said this.
How is that good?
I've said this before multiple times. Okay, so you buy it for 7%, you feel fucked. By the way, I was buying real estate at 7, 8, 9% back in the early 2000s. That's what I was paying. This is not a new thing that's happening, except for 20-year-olds. Okay, so let's say that's a new thing. Well, we'll 10th man this shit. Okay, 7, 8% you're paying really sucks. All right, so you buy that single family or two family. I actually recommend 2 family. And a couple of years from now, we all know rates are coming down. You're allowed to refinance once the rates come down, by the way. You're allowed to do it again. And that's what most Americans do. They refinance when the rates go down. So for a couple of years, it won't be a great, but the thing that will be great is that you will have less competition for the next couple of years, if that's true. If Chris is right, less competition, that's a good thing. Less people will be bidding on the houses. You'll be easier to get the one you actually want.
You also get somewhat of a discount on the prices of the homes if they feel like the rates are a deterrent.
And you can also not negotiate for like, oh, the garage door is messed up. I want 10,000 off for the garage door. 2 years ago, you couldn't negotiate shit. It was like, give me a cash offer and walk away.
Right, and walk away.
Yeah,
But
no, I know. My parents bought in 2020. I remember.
Yeah, give me a cash offer. I'm not negotiating with you. It's going as is, and that's tough noogies for you right now. It is very possible because the rates are higher. Not as many offers are coming in. That's true. And you can basically say, look, I'm not going to pay your exact offer. I'm going to have 10,000, 20,000 less, and I want you to fix these things. What's wrong with that?
So I think at this point, there's so much entrenched belief that you guys have. You're talking like a realtor. A lot of realtors are saying the same thing. Oh, you can always you can always refinance later. Yeah, if the price of your home still has the same amount of equity that's there. If your equity went down 20-30%, you can't refinance because now your mortgage is underwater. You know, that's the point that I'm trying to make. If you buy a home at, like, let's say the top of the market with a high interest rate, and your realtor sold you that idea and the price of your home drops 10%, 20%, bro, you're under negative equity. Whatever your down payment was, kiss that shit goodbye. No one is going to refinance you, even if it was at a lower rate.
Well, you have a good point that if you're buying a property that's completely overvalued, I keep going back to that. I don't buy overvalued properties. So, but yes, there are people who buy overvalued properties expecting to have massive returns. That not someone buying a house though to live in. That's not happening as much. They're buying a house, they're overpaying, blah, blah, blah. And they probably overpaid in Texas and Dallas when I was even bidding at those houses. They've all paid $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 for probably like $600,000 houses. That happened. I bet you they're just enjoying fine living in their expensive houses because they could afford them. Because we're in a weird time when these people have a lot of money and they can afford to do 20-30% down payments.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's not
down payments.
And that's the mistake that so many people make, is that they never prepare for a bad time, whether it's one partner losing their job, a death in the family, a medical bill that can end up screwing you over. You have to be ready for that dramatic downturn. Huh?
You sound like Dave Ramsey talking about getting an emergency fund.
No, you have to. I mean,
look, that's fine, but what's your solution? Yeah. Do not buy the house. Just keep waiting.
Wait for the crash.
I would say it depends on the region that you're in, what kind of living situation you're in right now, what kind of home you have. Because some people, like, I own a condo, right? I own two properties. Actually, I own my New York property and I own my Atlanta property. I have two condos, right? I've been in the market for the last 5 years. I saw the housing prices in Atlanta just go freaking nuts because of, one, there was little to no inventory that was coming on their market, right? And two, you had all these Wall Street guys coming in, buying up everything. And then you had all these people that thought that they were going to be Airbnb millionaires and just buying up everything and putting it on Airbnb. And COVID supercharged that with low interest rates and everything. What you're seeing now is the opposite happen. I'm seeing multiple price cuts everywhere in single family housing. So, I mean, my situation is anecdotal. I'm not going to say that for everyone. Maybe other people are seeing homes that are on the rise. But as far as I can tell, with the data that's being pointed, some of the biggest investor markets, like Arizona, I think, what is that thing called? In Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona has some of the highest concentration of Airbnb rentals, and same thing with short-term rentals and houses that were built like that. Texas, home building has just been crazy, and you're finally starting to see prices come down. So these are the kinds of things that I'm just saying that we should be on the lookout for when it comes to inflation. The price of shelter is going to come down, whether you're a renter or whether you're a homeowner. This concept of homes always go up, that is true, but if the homes don't go up beyond the inflation rate that's out there, you're not actually making any money. Single family homes are probably the worst thing that you could invest in terms of a total return. Multifamily, you can actually eke out a ton of profit because you can rent it out. You only have one boiler, you only have one roof, and you can arbitrage that thing where you can actually live in one apartment and have the other three, let's say, pay your rent. Those are fine. My thing is, with single family housing and multifamily housing, all this inventory coming to market, we're either going to see one of two scenarios. We're either going to see a crash in the prices on the market, or we're going to see a long period of normalization where the price of homes are not going to go crazy beyond what the current inflation is, and which makes them a terrible investment over a long period of time. Instead, it'd be better to be, unless you somehow can leverage that to your benefit.
Okay. I think as soon as you said long period of time, that's when you lost me. Because real estate will pay off over a long period of time.
Yeah, but but Vitaly, the question is your total rate of return. One of the things that I was looking at a home when I was in school in Long Island, in Stony Brook. If you look at the homes around Stony Brook, right, like in Nescaucet or Smithtown, right, they went up in value. When I was there, the homes were like 400,000. Right now, they're like 550,000 or 600,000. This was 20 years ago, right? The problem is in Long Island, the property taxes have gone so goddamn bananas that it makes no sense to buy a home there. So the prices have been artificially kind of kept somewhat even. So imagine right now, 20 years you were in that housing market, and in 20 years you got maybe a 50% $200,000 return, or a 50% return. Whereas if you were invested in, let's say, stocks in the last 20 years, you would have been what?
While
20x?
you lived under a bridge.
No one is saying that. No one is saying that. I'm saying
while you saved money, lived under a bridge, did not invest in a house because the return was so shitty for you that you had a home. You're saying
no one is saying that.
No one is. By the way, you're talking about BlackRock.
No one is saying that. I'm saying from a housing perspective, you should buy as your primary residence. You're going to build equity, and one day you will be free from the shelter equation completely. So I'm not saying in terms of, oh, you should never buy a home. But if you're thinking that, hey, I should just buy up a whole bunch of houses and hope that the capital appreciation on those houses will one day, be a asset that I want to be in, I would say, look, so there are other ways to make easier money. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the point, that right now the investors are what are driving the housing market much higher than what it is. And once these speculators get their asses handed to them, you're going to see a lot more normalization in terms of housing, whether it's through just market forces of unaffordability or legislation that's going to come in that's going to push them back down again. Right? There's no way you can sustain an economy with an unaffordable housing market that's sitting in unattainable for 90% of people coming out of school and trying to form families. Like you guys said it right now, if you hadn't bought homes in 2017, you'd be pretty screwed right now, because you could not afford to live where you live right now. And I would say the same thing. I couldn't afford to live in
for certain I wouldn't be able to afford the home that I'm in right now.
Yeah, and you think that's a good thing or it's a bad thing for the average person coming into that market?
Fuck them. They didn't buy it in 2017. Well, we did.
That's the capital.
But that is the
Carlos,
point.
last word, then we got to move on. Last word.
But that is the point. And I think
they didn't buy it at 28 when I did. They didn't buy it at 2010 when I did. They didn't buy it at 25 when I did. They didn't buy it in 2020. They didn't buy it in 2017. They just didn't buy it, and they're not going to.
People sometimes
they're afraid of the next thing. They're afraid of their own shadow.
No, dude. There are times where people do. Dude, how old were you? You were in your your 30s.
My first house I bought at 22. What are you talking about?
Yeah, me too. I bought in 2012. Shit. Me too. I bought when I was a much younger person too, but not everyone had that same luxury. There's a lot of people who are in different points. Like Amit right now. Amit, how old are you right now? You're 25, right? 25. Right. With your current income and salary, could you live outside of? Yeah, you know what? Fuck Amit. Who cares?
No, I know.
Here's the thing. Amit actually could. Amit actually could.
He could with my tutelage.
Even me, when I went in and bought a home, I didn't realize. I thought it was much more difficult than it actually was, and I thought it was much more expensive than it actually was. I think that there's sort of this stereotype of what it is to buy a home if you've never bought one before, because of the sticker shock of the price. But
no, there's definitely a way to manufacture. I mean, yeah, I bought my car at 21 and I put a $5,000 down payment, finance, like it was fine, right? So there is a way.
You could do it. Like if you wanted to do this, you could get yourself into a 2-family house. You'd be, you'd have to save for a little while, and look, you'd like we all did. It took me a year.
Actually, he wouldn't. His TFC spreads have printed. He can actually afford a house right now.
Right, right now. But the point is, if you made that your goal to say, you know what, while I'm doing this, I want to buy a property and I want to live in one of them, rent out the other space. Like it would take you a year. To get your finances in order, but then you would do that, but once you're in, man. And this is something that I've been thinking about, like recently, how buying stocks in good companies is very similar to buying real estate. It's like you're actually buying the company, and if you believe in the thesis, you should see it as if you're buying real estate. You're not going to jump out every time the price goes up or down, say 10-50%. You're looking at it for the long term, and I don't think people have that. I don't think people think about their stocks that way.
All right, we got to move on because we've been doing real estate for like 40 minutes now. So first, real quick, before we move on, we didn't acknowledge this because Chris didn't tell us this, but Mr. Chris Patel has passed 6,000 followers.
Thank you.
6,000 people now care about Christopher Patel's thoughts. It's going to be 10,000 by the end of the year.
Look how much younger it made him. At 10,000, he's going to be a baby.
I was thinking he looks
gonna
very
look like
young
the
here.
kid in,
You got younger. You got
he's gonna
the,
look like
He's
the kid
getting
in
younger and whiter.
Apparently, I got blue eyes too.
Roger Rabbit.
So congratulations, Chris. Did the wife get you cookies on this one, or she didn't care about this one anymore?
I told her to stop. That shit can't do that,
Stop with
man.
the cookies.
All right. Well, congrats to Chris. Now here's the big news of the day. Microsoft Activision deal moves closer as a judge denies the FTC injunction request. We ain't got to go through the article. The whole point is this deal is getting done. Let's start off with you, Vitaly, because you came in a little bit late. Raw thoughts on Microsoft having their way, bending over the United States government.
I actually, what did you just say? I totally.
You zoned out.
Basically, Microsoft.
This is when we were at dinner at Cheesecake Factory, just zoned out.
Just zoned out.
Microsoft can acquire.
Microsoft bought, or they're getting closer to paying $75 billion for Activision.
Oh, so they got approved by the courts?
That's a big acquisition, bros.
Yes.
That's
Okay, let's move on to Carlos.
Move on to somebody else. I wasn't paying attention today.
Huh?
What were your thoughts on this deal?
I think that at some point they have to pretend to care about some sort of antitrust or anti-monopoly laws here, and this just goes to show that your money rules the world. This is obviously not good for us or for the markets, but Microsoft got it done because they got the right people their money. It's as simple as that. This is politics as usual.
Okay, Chris, any thoughts on Microsoft getting this done?
I mean, we're becoming more oligarchy by the day, bro. These are the real people who control the planet and control the world.
Do you think it should have been stopped?
Yeah, I think so.
Really? Why?
I want to show you. Can you just share the screen while you guys talk? Like, this is just look how few companies actually own everything. This is these are beauty companies. This is the food that you eat. This is the companies that control like all the food that you eat, right?
Yeah, they own all the sub brands.
I mean, so you think that you would think that say Coca-Cola and Zyko coconut water are all different. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? It's an illusion of capitalism. It's not really capitalism, like to Chris's point. It's a little.
Chris, why should it have been stopped?
Well, number one, it's you have one independent publishers being bought out by these large companies, and that means that any other now publisher is going to have to compete with the backing of Microsoft, and basically Microsoft can lock out so many other competitors from coming in or even providing a platform. Like, think of it right now with Activision right now. Let's say Activision is its own brand, its own thing, trying to do its own thing, and Microsoft now just comes in and says, oh, you're going to do things our way. Otherwise, we won't put you on our platform. Now all of it is just going to be concentrated in one company. It's not. I never liked the idea of all the power and all the creative juices being sucked up by one company or one industry, like in that specific industry. Like you should have level of independence, and have businesses stand on their own. Because now anyone new publishers coming around, if you're on the Microsoft blacklist, you won't be able to succeed.
I mean, look, it's a fair point. All the video games in the world are going to have to. I mean, it's Epic and now Microsoft with Activision Blizzard. For Microsoft shareholders, this is great, though. I mean, this is like absolutely phenomenal for Microsoft. So that brings up the question: do you guys think, Satya Nadella said 500 billion in sales just because of AI in 2030? Where do you think? I just wanted to take this story as an opportunity to discuss. Where do we think Microsoft is 7 years from now? Market cap is about 2.9 trillion, 2.5 trillion right now. Owning the gaming industry, cloud computing is getting bigger. 50% of OpenAI. Any thoughts on where Microsoft is in the next 10 years?
I mean, why do we even have elections anymore? Why don't we just ask the heads of Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft? I mean, and like some of these big companies who they want in charge. I mean, what's the point of even having an election anymore?
But that's essentially, that is essentially what's happening. I don't know if you saw, but I posted that. I posted something that I found about Warren Buffett talking about how to fix the deficit. Can you pull that up? Did you see that, Amit?
No, I didn't see it. It's on Twitter.
Yeah. It was like one of my last. But I just saw something. I quote tweeted it. And this to me is how you control government in a nutshell. You'll see it. It's a quote from him.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Yeah, Freudian slip. Just ask BlackRock. But yeah, we'll play this and then you get into it.
Are problems that have built up over decades, and there hasn't been a Congress that's been mature enough or a president that's been mature enough to take this head on.
I could end the deficit in 5 minutes. You just pass a law that says that anytime there's a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. Now you put incentives in the right place, right? So it's capable of being done. And they're trying to use the incentive now that we're going to blow your brains out, America, in terms of your debt worthiness over time. And that's being used as a threat. A more effective threat would be just to say, if you guys can't get it done, we'll get some other guys to get it done. And it's
New. These problems.
And that's the point. His roundabout way of saying you have to incentivize the behaviors that you want. Congress and the members of Congress can invest and buy and sell stocks. So they're going to do what's in their best interest. Just like you and I will use whatever little lever we can. If you know someone in a specific industry, you'll try to use whatever leg that you can up to be able to get better returns. These guys are in the fucking Congress. So you don't think all of them? We should look and see how many of these people are holding Microsoft stock, right?
We should.
How many of these guys are holding Microsoft stock?
And even if they're not, vote,
how many of
by
those
the
are
way,
in their ETFs?
that they can't even vote not to buy individual stocks, okay, just to make that illegal. So you think they're going to change and actually vote themselves out? I mean, like, this is absolutely never going to happen.
There needs to be some better term limits, man.
No, but
House
his
of
point is,
Representatives.
let me play devil's advocate here. Is that actually the reason for the corruption in Congress to the benefit of America having the most prosperity? Which is that if the Congress people can't fuck the companies, nothing's fucking the companies, which means the shareholders are going to get their money no matter what.
That's if you own shares in Microsoft. If you don't own shares in Microsoft, you can't afford to have shares in Microsoft or BlackRock or any of these other big companies. You don't have that kind of disposable income. You are forever just a slave. You might as well just say, hey, I am a slave, because that's what you are. All you're doing is literally subsiding in the economy. And there's plenty of people right now that are living paycheck to paycheck. Their biggest aspiration in life is that one vacation a year. That's it. There's no plan for retirement. There's no plan for the kids to go to any decent schools that they want to. All it is wake up, go to your job, be a fucking drone, and then come home and that's it.
But Chris, don't you
no
think that's on the individual to get educated on how that?
No, that's not how it works.
Can you bring up Johnny's quote at
Well,
7?
no, that is how it works, because we talked about this before. We don't teach people financial education at all, right? In school, there's nothing that's going on in our schools that teaches them to prepare them for actual life, right? So that's the first step. And when that changes, I think we can have other changes that are more significant. But if they don't want to change that, what keeps drones.
What is there? There is no incentive for them to teach those people those things, because
that's what I'm saying.
When you come out of school, they want you to be a worker that gives all of your life from 18 or 20 years old till 65 to some random fucking company that'll get rid of you at any minute, right? On the hope that you'll get a pension or whatever it is, right? Or that you'll have your 401k and they'll pay 10, 15
But that's the
years
point of
the
investing in the market, to have actual equity of it. So that's my point, Chris. Don't you think people should just like try to get self-educated and get themselves out of this kind of work gloomy lifestyle? Like,
not everyone has that luxury.
How did you Amit, how did you hear about the stock market?
I downloaded Robin.
No. That was long before. How did you first hear about the stock market, that there's stocks that I can buy in companies? Where was that idea introduced to you?
Was that in school? That's what we're asking.
I went to business school, and I swear to God, not once did they actually mention.
So where did it come from? Even for you, Chris and Vitaly, where
I think it was my uncle in India, to be honest. It was my uncle.
He's the guy that said to you, you should invest in stocks.
Because he has a big U.S. equity portfolio just in U.S. ETFs, and so he mentioned it to me when I went to India in 2019. I downloaded Robinhood.
How old were you?
21 at the time.
Okay, so before 21 years old, no one.
I never heard. I didn't know what a stock was. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
No.
What about you, Chris? With Vitaly? How did you hear about the stock?
I think Amit learned what a stock was when he bought Palantir.
No, I learned what a stock was when I bought Purple Biotech, and these motherfuckers did a reverse split on me, and I was like, "Oh, that's what a stock is."
But honestly, sometimes you have to have skin in the game in order to learn anything.
So. It was a good experience. I still hold the stock today. They had a PR.
I learned about the stock market in the 9th grade when, literally one of our teachers. This was the year 2000. What he did was he made us every day look into the newspapers, because back in the day, no one really had computers like that, and go to the New York Times and then get the price of the Dow Jones Industrial, and then on graph paper, write down, literally just take the price and like market, and basically showed us like, oh, this is what the stock market is, this is how it goes up, and that's like your ownership over a company. And so he did like show us it was like economics, but it wasn't like a hardcore thing that was really like brought up multiple times. But let me just say this: we are privileged people that have the ability to have additional income, whether that's through our own toils and labors, okay, whether it's through our own trying to find understanding in the market or whatever to try to better and educate ourselves. We are not most Americans, okay? Like there's still very
That's
few
true.
people that invest in the stock market and end up doing well in it, okay? Most people are still like literally have enough to eat and have a place to sleep, and that's it. Like we have to think outside of that and say, okay, for the general public and general economy, what does this mean? And let me tell you, I'm a capitalist like there is no tomorrow. I wish I could extract the blood and sweat out of every single person and use that to build myself an empire, but that is an unsustainable business model, because eventually the peasants will rise up and fucking drink our blood. You do not want that. You
Damn,
want the
this went-
peasants
this
to
went-
be under.
Went
You
dark
want to
real
give.
fast.
You want the peasants to have enough so that they can actually have a decent life.
Somebody's
Like,
been
I-
watching the Napoleon trailer too.
First of
many
all,
times.
Chris, I agree with you. And there should be, first of all, like I keep saying, everyone has to learn a bare minimum of financial education. Okay. They just have to. That should be just part of the curriculum for better society. And after they do that, they can. So it's not every peasant is going to become obviously a billionaire, but at least they'll have some sort of a nest egg being built up. That's what we need, where
right,
people can
agreed.
have something when they retire as opposed to nothing. And then the system has to support those people. So
Yes.
I know government is actually not for not for basically teaching folks, because I think they do want this sort of slave class. I think they do want it.
Yes, agreed.
Because otherwise
Agreed.
they would just change the system easily. They would say every
Agreed.
school, every federally funded school has to teach basic financial education. That's it.
But basic financial education is like balancing your checkbook and like basic home economics. It's not.
Well, no, it
invest-
could be like, okay, guys, you need to learn about the stock market, and in terms invest in just ETFs and like VOO. It could be something simple. It doesn't have to be very complicated. Everyone should start that on their 16th birthday or whatever it is. And that could be like a class you take, and then you open up an account and you do just simple stuff like that. This doesn't have to be hard. It could be like 10 bucks.
I'm sure those things exist. They're just unfortunately
They
not.
weren't in my
mandated.
high school.
They're not. It wasn't mandated. I mean, but just to
But
get back to
that's
just to
the
get
only
back-
way to change the future. It's not through like giving out. It's not just like giving away money or doing
Right. But we've already established that this is the future. It's like the Warren Buffett thing. You're incentivizing the behaviors that you want. So you're not teaching people, because the behavior that you want or the outcome that you want is a slave class that basically works and gives their money to companies like BlackRock, who will invest their money on their
But
behalf
wouldn't the United
and
States
then take all of
want-
the voting rights. You
Wouldn't they
understand?
want all 300 million people to invest in stocks? Because that just means the stock market's
No.
gonna get a shit ton of capital.
No.
What's the reason they don't want that?
Because if you know how markets work, first of all, you're then onto how markets can be manipulated. If you have any sort of education, you understand how markets are being manipulated, and you can start to trace the breadcrumbs back to the problems that we have in society and how it traces back to money. As a matter of fact, the campaign that's been put out there is to hate the billionaires
Yeah,
and hate the
that's true.
accumulation of money.
That's
And
true.
what they teach you in school, people that hate guys like Elon Musk, like we've said this before, every generation has their hated billionaire. It used to be Bill Gates, then it was Jeff Bezos, now it's Elon Musk's turn. And why do they do that? So that you can hate billionaires and hate the accumulation or the desire to accumulate money, because they teach you that in order for them to make their money, they had to take something from you. The people that invest in the stock market know that's not the case. All you need to do, it's a machine to transfer money from like the impatient to the patient. That's what it is.
AOC should be telling people to buy
Absolutely.
stocks, but she
Instead of
never-
saying not
never-
to, right? She bought a Tesla, but she's not
Yeah.
advising to buy
Yeah.
stocks, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
She bought a
And you
Tesla?
don't think
She
she's
did buy a Tesla, yeah.
yeah, and her what is her net worth now? Someone can look it up. I think it's $8 million.
Has to be
This
in a
was
couple millions, yeah.
bartender
It's 13
in
million Twitter
fucking
followers.
Queens, dude.
Well, also
All
you
of
gotta,
them
you gotta
fucking write
listen.
books.
Someone goes
Yeah.
from being a waitress to a net worth of 8 million. That should be like, wow, like that's
That
amazing.
should be celebrated, but for
Right,
her,
that should be
she's
celebrated.
No, but-
on her
But her success, this is what's so fucked up about it, is her success is celebrated. She did it. She made it, but she's now part of the millionaire class. And it didn't say how backwards it is. The same people that will praise her for coming up out of that will shit on someone like Elon Musk just because he has more money.
It's
or
too much.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
It's it's like Elizabeth Warren on her fucking private jet.
Oh.
It's like, bitch, you're gonna tell me about the climate and you can just getting off your private jet. Like,
did you see the? Oh,
Did you see that? You're talking about the Spain thing, right?
Are you saying that because of the chick in Spain?
Bro, there was the lady in Spain who was going to a climate bro, let me explain.
Pull it
this
up.
lady went on a
best thing ever.
She went on a private jet to come to a conference. She's the prime minister of Spain.
She's the prime minister of Spain. Yeah, she was
prime
going
minister
to
of Spain.
She's
a socialist. She's going to the climate conference. She gets on a private jet. She gets off the private jet. She gets on a bike instead of a limo.
God.
And that's what they put on the news. Vitaly, that's what they put on the news. Is her on her bike.
So ridiculous.
Come on.
Oh my goodness. No, that's a good point. If we invest in stocks, we become dangerous as citizens because we start knowing stuff.
So
yeah, it's not like you're ever gonna have any real
but you know, Amit, as soon as you join the billionaire class, like your life changes so much you don't notice it, but it slowly just goes away from those people that we grew up with that are still struggling and poor and can't. I'm telling you, you just move away from those people. And I think me and Carlos talk about it, that the richer we get, the more we invest, the further we get from our old friends who didn't do any of that.
Yeah,
right.
Like
that was actually that was actually a question. I didn't learn about the stock market. I learned a little bit about it through movies because you would hear these guys making all this money in the stock market, right? But then it was like my aunt who sat me down when I started making money for the first time. I was around the same age, around 21. She's like, you're starting to make money now. I made a shit ton of money in Home Depot and GE and all these companies from the 70s and 80s. This is the way that you make money, and this is the way you'll be able to buy a home. She really beat that into me. And then my friend Phil, who was saying the same thing at the same time. I wanted to ask this question to the chat. How many people here, like we've got 433 people. I would guess that the reason we have these people is because they don't have people in their real life to talk to this shit about. It's like Vitaly's point.
At 10 p.m.
Yeah, well, at 10, just in general. Like, I find that I'm one of the few people in my own circle of friends that's actually interested in investing. Not only do they not care, but they'll actually look down on you because they feel like you think you're better than them. Because it's so stock market.
That's because I am better than them. Fuck that. I'll just be honest.
He's like, I got 6,000 followers.
Bitch. Fucking better than
I got 6,000 followers, bitch. How many you got?
I don't give a shit how many followers. No, if I'm taking charge of my life and it's provided me and my family some level of comfort, congratulations to me. Fuck you to you. Like, sorry, you're a hater. That's it. But my point is,
when I
don't
say
want
that shit, I don't want. This guy says the same thing.
But I don't want my hater to fuck. But I don't want my.
It's the Middle Eastern accent. It's that.
Go ahead, Chris. Finish.
First of all, Carlos, India is not in the Middle East. Okay, it's in South Asia. You guys, you posted that on Twitter. Yeah, and you were like it was so funny, dude.
I know. You posted that on Twitter. You did. Oh my god.
I know, but you know what? I don't care.
Like, I don't. My uncle's not an oil sheik.
I don't care. You're all Middle Eastern, bro. You're all fucking
Chris, it's so hard to reach. By the way, normal people. And by the way, I do segregate in terms of like the community that's right now talking. They are totally different than the people out there, the 99 percenters. Okay, because they don't go at night and learn about investing.
100%. The 433 people here actually give a fuck about.
They're totally different. Right. So you guys are not the same, even though you're, you
guys are better than your friends who don't give a fuck.
But my point is simply that they're the only ones like of their group. They have other friends, they have colleagues, they have people they grew up with. Like all your friends on Facebook, are any of them in the stock market?
And I think that was Chris's point about 99% of people don't care about the markets. Yeah, Vitaly, go ahead. Finish.
No, so I talked to a lot of, obviously I work with all sorts of different hierarchies of people, producers, production assistants, different levels of income and all this. And like, I talk to stocks about everybody. I'm not shy about that. Hey, you should be doing this kind of investing because I'm just trying to help pay it forward a bit. But the amount of people who actually want to hear it and listen is like almost zero. Okay.
Zilch.
It's like nothing. And, even family members, like I'm like talking to my cousin is impossible about money because all he keeps telling me is how he has no money and he has too many kids and he has this and this and that. And I'm like, dude, we were in the same position. We grew up in the exact same neighborhood. Okay. Same family circumstances. Nothing was different about me and you in terms of growing up. The difference is you just didn't take this seriously. That's it.
So when did the mindset change for you, Vitaly, to care about
Oh,
Just
no, no. I
stocks in
started
general.
reading at 17 in terms of investing, not the stock market, but just
That was like the
investing.
Think and Grow Rich, all that type of philosophy stuff, right?
Rich Dad,
So
Poor Dad, all
I
those
think,
books.
I think
Yes.
that's a good point, because in 2018, I went through a phase of about 20 books, like the typical self-help money bullshit stuff, like the stuff that I think is necessary, and then you move on from it. Did you guys have that phase where you had a summer where you just like turned into like, oh, I'm going to take control of my finances?
Yes.
Because it happened to me.
And then it
about 5
takes
years
10
ago.
years after that.
And it takes
Yeah,
10 years
no,
to actually
no,
get it
but
right.
it does because I don't, if you get lucky when you first come out of the gate and you buy a stock and then it goes up 15-20%, you start to think it's easy and you can be guilty of your own success, and you find yourself for years just chasing that. It takes a long time to realize that it's a long-term thing. It's very similar to like anyone that's ever picked up an instrument, right? You try to pick up guitar, you're going to learn some things very quickly, but then you're going to hear a master and you're going to be like, oh shit, like I'm nothing. And you start to learn that there's levels to it, and investing's the same way.
This is my common discussion with almost everybody, but I'll bring up my cousin because I talk to him more or less. Even
if you're watching, I know the guy.
He's not watching this. Don't worry.
No, he is not
he
watching this.
doesn't give a shit about this.
He's not watching this right now.
Finance junkie.
He's not watching this. No. So I'm like, even when like the stocks are down, like Enphase or whatever I'm into, I'm like, all right, you should just throw some. I do it like as a simple message, like, hey, bro, like you should just like throw some money into this and forget about it. And then just like a barrage of statements of like, yo, you don't know my expenses. I got kids, this and this and that. I'm like, okay, well, I tried. Thank you.
in 2020, when Bitcoin was like at $3,000 and it was rising up, and I watched it go from like March to what was it? It was like 8,000 in June. And I'm looking at every freaking chart imaginable. I cannot tell you how obsessed I was with crypto in 2020, right? I don't know if we didn't have a Discord back then, but it was nothing but crypto purchases. And I was screaming at everyone. And I'm telling you, it was like uncomfortable. Like I would say, don't say something. And I would hear it coming out of my mouth with someone I just met. Like, I'm like, don't mention Bitcoin. And I'm like, someone would mention something and I'd be like, they would say like, I don't know.
Did you mention it to a girl on a date at that time?
No. Well, actually, no, I did talk to an ex, and I told her to buy some crypto. But like literally someone would say, turn the volume up. I'd be like, up? You know what else is going up? Bitcoin, if you buy right now. Like I was like you with Palantir. And like, I told so many people. There's like, I'd say maybe 20 people. 3 of them bought out of 20. The rest of them, like some of them don't even want to talk about it anymore. But nobody listened. Nobody wants to listen because their thing is, what if it goes down? There's nothing you can tell people if they come at you with what if it goes down, or like Vitaly said, I have no money, I've got other expenses, I've got whatever. And I'm like, well, what else are you going to use those current dollars that you have today to work for you in the future? If you're not buying, let's say, real estate, if you're not buying that, how are you going to make this money work for you in the future?
It's a short-term mindset, because like if you ask those same folks, and everybody can ask their own, I'm sure they have similar stories. Ask what's going to happen in 10 years from now? Like, where are you going to be like 20 years from now? Those folks don't think about that. They just don't.
They also don't want to.
Well,
it's
yeah,
scary.
I mean,
it's a fact,
scary.
bro.
It's scary.
They think about tomorrow, of course.
Yeah,
and next week they're going to a club or whatever's happening, or they're going to a birthday or something. But they just don't want to think.
They think happy hour can make them happy. And it's
it's like, but what happens to you that you're living in this apartment, you have 3 kids, you're not thinking about your future or theirs, by the way, at the same time. That's what's even worse, because like you're not thinking about processing what's happening to them, what they're seeing and how they're growing up. That's how we're in this vicious cycle, right? Someone at some point has to break the cycle and say, hey, let me think about this. Let me think about what happens when I'm 65 years old. Can I afford my lifestyle? That's what always scared me, and scared nobody else around me when I was 17. But I was terrified ever since I was 17. What's going to happen when I'm 65? I don't want to be like a trudging along,
I told one person, like,
let's get Chris real quick. Let's get Chris and Carlos. Go ahead, Chris.
I'll just say, I look at classical history as a good example of like different things that you could learn. And one of the things is, if you look at like societal classes in the Roman Republic, that'll give you an idea of what like the US is really like. We're a republic at the end of the day, but you have 2 classes of people. You have the patricians, and then you have the plebeians, right? So patricians were like the ones that owned everything, and the plebeians, which were like the ones that basically were citizens of Rome, but just kind of like were there to survive. And then you had the slave class, which we can just call the illegal immigrant class in the US, and basically they toil and they're pretty much there to serve, right? That is where we have a class hierarchy in the United States. The thing is, though, We don't want a situation where the patrician, the plebeians and the slave classes end up in a place where they feel that they are being so marginalized that they have no future and that they can't even dream of a tomorrow. Imagine right now, you just said, oh, all they care about is tomorrow. Imagine these people not even having enough for tomorrow. That's when they fucking rise up and they start to go after people like us. And what I mean by that is they go after things that we care about, like capital gains taxes. Do we want an 80% capital gains tax? Because as a stock investor, I don't want that. But these people would love that shit, right?
No,
we don't want the Warren Buffett's, not the Warren Buffett, the Warren fucking
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warrens of the world, or the fucking Bernie Sanders of the world that says any success that comes beyond like a small measure needs to be taxed. Needs to be taxed to the point where there should be no millionaires or there should be no billion, all that shit. We don't want that, right? So that means that we have to make sure that we're creating an equitable situation where they get to dream about tomorrow and we get to dream about fucking 10 years from now.
Yeah, but Chris, you see the groundwork for where that uprising would go is already being laid. It's about UBI and it's about taxing the billionaires. I've gotten into so many arguments with people on Twitter for this very thing, where they say tax, like Elon Musk or Walmart didn't pay any taxes. And it's like, you only pay taxes on income, not wealth. This is such a clean distinction for
people. Don't understand what wealth is.
They don't understand that you can have money or have wealth and your wealth can increase without making, and I frequently make the argument about your home. I was like, what you're saying is that every year, if your house goes up in value, if it goes up 50, like in COVID, my house doubled, I would be on the hook for, whatever, $500,000 worth of taxes on that money. Who would ever own a home? It would.
What's funny, wasn't that we talked to LG? I think in Sweden they do charge wealth tax. Is that right?
I don't know.
They tried it in certain European countries, but it fucking failed massively. It failed massively.
I thought it was in Sweden.
How did they calculate it? How do you calculate taxes on someone's
They
wealth?
look at the value of your portfolio, whatever it is, like your stocks, your real estate.
Right.
You can get a value for it, the market value.
Okay.
And then you can tax someone on it.
Okay. So let me say this. Vitaly, you've got 10 grand in the bank to cover
all my money is hidden in Bitcoin somewhere in the different islands.
Okay, but the money that we know about, you have 10 grand in the bank right now, and you're working, you make, say, whatever, 3 grand a week. That's and you have $1 million in a stock portfolio somewhere, right? Yep. And in the next year, the market doubles. Like you were all in on Palantir and it fucking doubled, right? So
right.
Now you've got $2 million. Now you have $2 million, okay? You still only have 10 grand in the bank, but you have $2 million on paper. Now the government says you need to pay taxes on that $1 million. Let's just say that the tax rate's 50%. So now you owe the government $500,000.
You have to sell some of your stock, yeah.
So now you sell the stock
economies. It's gonna fuck companies.
Now you sell $500,000 worth of Palantir. You give it to the government, and then that year when you fill out your taxes, they're like, "Well, wait a minute, you sold $500,000 of a stock at a gain. You owe us capital gains."
Well, no, I think when they do
500,000,
I'm not sure
then where does that money come from?
Yeah, it's ridiculous what you're saying, of course. Meaning, if it happens, it's ridiculous. But I think if they do a wealth tax, then and you have to sell to pay it off, there's got to be a provision.
There's already a wealth tax that we never speak about, but it's there.
Is it
property taxes?
No,
yeah, property taxes.
That's what it is.
The price of your home goes up, you have to pay more, which makes no fucking sense technically, because it's like, I'm not getting any richer personally. It's just my home seems to be in a location that's
I'm
desirable.
Not getting richer. It's just my home getting richer.
No, it's just
it is, but that's basically a reverse dividend.
Yeah, dude. I know people in Long Island fucking paying $14,000-$15,000 a year in property taxes. In Westchester, $18,000 on property taxes, and they could have bought this house like $200,000-$300,000 20-30 years ago. Yeah. Motherfuckers are paying $15,000 a year in property taxes.
Right, they're probably paying more in property taxes than they were ever paying for the mortgage.
Mm-hmm. Let me pull up a couple comments that make a lot of sense. Michael says, I used to agree with the whole tax the rich stuff until I started making money. Artist here says a wealth tax means you never own anything ever, and then he also
will be happy. And you'll be happy.
Right. And he also says, investing takes discipline, foresight, and saving the minds of nihilists, anarchists, and haters can't fathom any more than short-term lizard brain desires, which I think speaks to the point of as soon, and I think I can speak to this uniquely because I'm the youngest here, as soon as you get a little bit of ownership, your whole fucking mindset changes. Now you're like, why the fuck are we obsessed about identity politics? Why do we care about the Democrats or the Republicans? Let me just.
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction.
No, but let's go back to the earlier conversation. 99.9% of people are not concerned when they're 65 in wealth creation and wealth building. They're just not. It's just not an interesting thing to them.
What you mean?
No, so
you're saying-
that's my thing.
you're
When you
saying the
have an
older-
ownership or when
No,
I
I'm saying
owned
kids
equity,
of its age, they're not thinking about being 65 and creating wealth and
They're
then
not.
they're
Oh,
not
right.
thinking
Oh,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah.
So
none
that
of my
goes
friends
back to
care
that.
about this. And so some of my friends are obsessed with all these political things. And I'm like, motherfucker, like when you're 65, it's not going to matter what AOC was doing. Like what matters is like, are you building a mindset for you to feel as if you are progressing in life? And that comes with ownership. But as soon as you get ownership of something, you think like that. If you don't have any ownership, you're always thinking of tax the risk. And I think that is the difference between the 465 people that are here and the people that are watching Netflix right now.
And you know, you say each one of those has 10 friends, right? 465 times 10, you got 46,000 people. Say whatever it is, right?
4,600. Yes.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
never
Or
gonna-
Middle
100
East, South
or
Asia, 46,000.
100 people, whatever it is. So you've got a much bigger circle of people, right? And these are the 465 out of there. And they probably, and I'm asking this again to the chat. Do you talk to your friends? Do you talk to people outside of like the community that you're on Twitter or on YouTube about investing? Do you talk to
Bro,
people
let's do
with
an
your
experiment
family?
right now. Let's do an experiment right now. Everyone here, you don't have to do this, but if you want to, text a friend about, hey, do you invest in the stock market or do you know about the S&P 500? Just ask them a basic question on investing. Just see
Or
what
be like,
either
hey,
you're gonna get no response
Hey,
or it's gonna
yeah,
be a bullshit response.
yeah, or
And just
I
see what
would
they say.
I would not. So this is one of the
Chris
reasons
is like,
why
I want to keep the
people-
money
I
all
would-
the
I
time.
would not
No,
because- because-
Don't tell your
Chris
friends
is
you could
talking
make
about
money.
the pleb can't come back. And now
No, let me explain.
Don't tell
because
anybody, please. It's a secret.
I don't want.
let them
no, I
FOMO in
don't want
later.
No, I don't want people to be in a situation where I have a friend. I see them all the time, and I think a company is going to do well. I think it's going to do exceptionally well, and it doesn't do well, and they lose money. And now I have a friend. Every time I see him, throws that shit in my face. I
I'm not
actually
saying
spoke.
tell them to buy a stock.
I spoke
saying
about
ask
this. No, I spoke. I had a conversation.
Chris, I'm sorry
with
I'm
this
giving
on
you
Twitter.
shit.
No, not you. I'm saying I had a
know.
conversation with one of our followers, who basically Godwin, who basically said, yeah, like he told someone in 2018, like, hey, you should buy some, like he told someone like you should buy some Tesla. Tesla's a good company, blah blah blah. And Tesla went down a little bit. Guess what happened? Everyone's like, oh, look at this guy over here, fucking Mr. Stock Market over here telling me this, and I lost my money going into this company, right? And now you have a strained relationship. That's why even though I know what I'm doing, or at least I feel like I know what I'll never fucking say that to any of my friends at work, because I do not want to come to work and them coming to me and saying, hey, the market's down like 20%. What do I do? And I have to be like, oh shit, man, how do I explain this? So I know that it's one of those things that we want to get people educated to do well. But remember, not all investments work out the way we hope. And even at the best of times, our intention could be good, but the outcome could be really bad. And that could really strain relationships.
But you know what, Chris? Like there is a way to talk to people about it. That's not that doesn't put yourself on the hook. You've got to give the people the caveats. Like, hey, markets go up, markets go down. There's things at it. But if I look
and
at
if
what
someone breaks a
companies
friendship
do,
with you because you mentioned a stock and
then
it went
they're-
down,
yeah,
so that's not a
because
fucking friend.
like, people will push bans on other people and they won't push stocks. Like, yo, you gotta listen to this band. You gotta listen to this band.
That's a good
But
point.
they won't push a fucking
Well, you
stock.
don't lose $10,000 listening to a band.
But you also don't make
Chris
any
has
money.
a really good point because
you
the socio-dynamic culture, the socio-cultural aspect of being
Here
at
comes
work or
Card.
at a
There
party.
you go. Here comes Card.
It fucks with you if you say someone to buy a stock, your uncle, and then it's down or whatever. I'm just saying the experiment should be, hey, text your like, hey, do you invest in the S&P 500? And see if they say, what the fuck is the S&P 500?
Well, no, this is what I'm
all
saying.
I'm
They have to start safe. You can't be like, go buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, don't get into crypto. And
I mean,
I'm just curious if people have
I
friends
did-
that
I
know
did
about
an-
the market.
I did the
people
same,
are
by the
really
way, but I'm saying like to
Nah,
start people who are not investing, like you're talking, you talk about at least invest in the S&P and let's buy VOO, buy some just quality things that you don't have to worry about. But even then, they're just not interested. They're just
You
not.
know what? You know how I approach people? Most of the time, I tell people when they say to me, "No, I don't do anything in the stock market." I'm like, "Do you have a 401k?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You are in the fucking
You
stock
are in the
market.
fucking stock market.
You're already in the stock market. You're just not the one actually putting the money in. You're just letting someone else be a shepherd of your cash, and it's not. And you always have that as a backup. But what I tell people is, I'm like, if you're gonna follow like a sports team or have like a fantasy football league or whatever it is, or if you're gonna follow any sort of sport,
Follow a company.
This is like a sport. It's like a sport, but you can actually
And
make
it's more
money on it.
fun.
To me, it is. And look, for some people, for some people, it's not. Some people don't like it. I think it's intimidating to some people. But
Chris,
Yes,
go ahead.
The other thing is, even with like, let's say really good advice, like, oh, you should just buy an index fund, the S&P 500. If they had bought that in February of 2020 and they were down fucking like 20-30%, you don't know their mindset. They would have just sold and said, you fucking cost me this much money. right? And
You worry
basically,
but you worry a lot about that's not on you, dude, because you say I fucking lost money too. The money.
no,
Nah,
Carlos,
he had
Carlos,
puts,
they're-
baby. Chris,
No,
had
no, no,
the
no, no, no.
ramification, no,
You-
Carlos, the
you-
ramifications, the
Keep going.
ramifications for what you can talk about can cause resentment that can last a lifetime. I'll give you an example. One of my dad's friends told him about, oh, you should be in the stock market in the year 2000 when everything was going up. What did my dad do? He put a little bit of money in the stock market, did really well, and then guess what he did? He put fucking everything, including my college savings, in the stock market. Bought every single tech company that was
This
there,
explains
and
Chris
ended
a
up
lot.
and ended up losing all the money. Okay, and I'm talking about things went to fucking zero.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What do you do from that? What happens now is now my family went from okay, living financially independently to living in a 1-bedroom apartment for the next fucking 10 years, with me having to struggle through college and not going to like higher school, me having to go to state school. What does that do? If I see that fucking guy, I'll punch him in the face, because he only told my dad one part of the story, saying, oh, investing in the stock market is good, without educating my dad on the other side.
But that's the point. You have
Right.
you have to tell people, you have to tell people the pluses and the minuses, and you have to tell them what the risks are. And it's
Well,
like,
your dad also took a very poor risk. Okay.
yeah, he went to
Like,
Vegas. He did
Right.
he went all in on red.
he's like red or black. That's what
But
he did.
dude,
He's
but
like
that's
some guy
what
that we know that went to Vegas and just kept
but
betting
that's
on.
what everyone does. When you're uneducated, you're
true.
ill-informed, and you
That's a good
see
point.
this right now. Look at the companies. People are fucking buying up Carvana. People are buying up all these bullshit companies. People are buying up companies that are losing money hand over fist, thinking that, oh my God, this is what's going to turn me into a millionaire. And guess what? I hope that they end up being right, to be honest with you. I really do. Because if they're not right, what's the opposite outcome of that? Oh, you cost
You know
me
what?
X, Y,
I'll
money.
give you.
You get to learn about the market through your losses, so it's a lesson for them.
Listen,
and
you
that's-
do, but I'll give you a
that's not the best
backdoor.
outcome, obviously.
I'll give you a backdoor reason or a ancillary reason why, even with that as a risk, it's important to educate these people, because they vote, and any one of those people can cancel out your vote, right? And if they think that people that make money are evil and are taking money from them, they're gonna vote for policies that aren't necessarily in their best interest. Right now, those poor people that don't have any money, they're being sold this idea that billionaires or millionaires are taking money from them. They're being sold this idea like UBI, right? Or taxing people's wealth is the way out of this thing. Eventually, if there's enough of them, they can vote these ridiculous policies into existence. And so, Johnny posted this a while ago. I asked you to put it up, and he was like, just screw everybody else, do you, and don't worry about anything. But like, you can only do that for so long. There comes a point where if you just ignore and ignore and ignore, eventually it's possible that it could come. It could come for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way to have these discussions without literally giving them advice. But Chris's point is valid, because when they do trust you and you give them advice and it tanks, it's hard to have a relationship. So I don't give any of my friends stock picks at all. But when I try to talk to them about interest rates, they don't care. Except Vitaly. I tell them to buy Palantir every day. Artist here, thank you again for the $5 super chat.
You don't.
People need to learn how to hedge against tail risk. They do it with their house, their car, but not their portfolio. Yeah, that is very.
What is
true.
it? People need pull it up again.
People need to learn how to hedge against their portfolio. He's saying.
I think he's saying buy puts. Okay.
He's saying buy puts. He's saying just be more conservative and understand that stocks don't go up and down all the time. So if Chris says buy,
I think with every
hold on. Let me just say this. With an education, you have to spend some time and actually explain to them what happens in the market. It can't be just like a stock tip. It can't be like buy this because I think.
No, but I think that's
up.
Chris's point. Do you have that much time to dedicate to that?
Yes. I spend an hour a day talking about
this.
What do you think? What do you think I do the other 23 hours?
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Listen, all day long, if someone asks me a question about this or we just discuss stocks, even while I'm working, we talk about it. And the people who listen, they do listen, but it's only like the 1% out of the 100 usually, right? That's the statistics, at least I've come across, that there always is one. Even at work right now, there's a guy who's listening all the time to everything I'm saying. He started buying Enphase, and I'm like, look, this shit, but I'm like, look, this shit can go down. And now he's seen it go down and he's still buying.
So you got him bag holding, basically.
I got him bag holding, idiot. But
he's like, what is this solar microinverter bullshit?
Amit's been creating bag holders since fucking Palantir was like 30.
No. My point is, it's actually good that it's going down because
it was actually 22. Relax.
Well, listen, it's bad when something goes up on you, because when it goes up on you, just like Chris's father, the first thing you think is that I'm a genius and you just go crazy. Now he's learning. Now he has to learn about the company. Now he has to do some more research. Now he has to see if he wants to buy some more. So now a lot of things are happening.
How
That
much is he down? Do you know how much he's down? Like a thousand,
it's
couple
probably
thousand
not
bucks?
much. It's probably a couple of $1,000. Big deal. He's not like dumping hundreds of thousands into it. He's not that well. But my point is, he's one guy out of the 100 I talked to in the last couple of months that actually did something and is trying to do something better. So the point being that I'm educating him at the same time. It's not just go buy this. It's let's discuss why this could be good, or let's discuss the market. Like because a lot of these people by that I work with, they think it's just gambling. They think buying stocks is like a casino.
No, so does a lot of people I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but that's part of the education. And I think whoever you're speaking to, whether it's one of Chris's friends who might be more affluent but scared of the markets, or somebody who's a young kid, you can always find a way to have them understand the concept that you're trying to explain. So even if you just say it's just like buying a home, your parents don't go out and sell their home the moment that it loses value. You stay in it because you recognize that it's a long-term hold, and in general, if you hold it long enough, it will gain value. I created my best performing stocks. What did they tell you to buy Enphase and Tesla?
Here. Chris, go ahead.
Anyway, you got my point.
No, I get your point.
You give them the education based on the level that they're at. You don't start talking to them about spreads and call options.
Yeah, you never go that
out of the gate, because that does seem like gambling.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? I think the difference between Vegas style gambling, where you go in there, and stock market gambling is you're able to actually have a house edge because you have information. You have access to information about things. Whereas in Vegas, you're literally just trying to play the odds and playing risk, right? Which is fine, that you can still theoretically make some money like that. But think of going to Vegas and the stock market kind of like poker, where if you know what you're doing in poker, you can actually make money because there is no house edge. You're just playing against the other guy, right? And that's what the stock market is. You're just playing against the other guy because they think it's more valuable or they think it's less valuable. And then you make your bet on your side, thinking that, hey, I think this company is more valuable or less valuable. And so that's the key for every company that you guys bought, someone sold, right? The shares were sold by somebody, whether it was an industry, whether it was an insider, or whether it was a hedge fund owner, whether it was another retail investor. So when you're betting not against the house, but you're betting against each other. And I think the key is the person that has more knowledge and better risk appetite and better risk control will be able to actually outcompete everyone else. The question is, not everyone has that time, effort, and energy to do it. That's why they turn into guys like us who try to put out a case out there saying, hey, I think this company is going to do X, Y, and Z because of this reason. Do what you will with that information. I have the time to sit there and research this thing. You may not. You may want to just focus on other things. And so when you come to us, that's what you get. You get our opinion. And sometimes our opinions are right. Like if you bought Meta, or if you bought SMCI, or if you bought Weight Watchers, or if you bought, all right, I'm going to stop.
Duolingo, or if you bought this, or you bought
so that's the point. So I think what it is when you have people like that, you tune into them, you listen to them, and they give you good advice, that could really help. Like for me, I follow the All In podcast. I watch the Compound. I have a few books that I have specifically with investors who've made money and what the reasoning why they invest the way they do and apply those same concepts to companies that I look at. And it's been successful for me, So this is one of those things that if you put in some time, or if you're smart enough, you follow the right people, you'll actually make some good money.
All right, can we wrap this up, guys?
That's it. This is a great pod. I think people enjoyed it. Thank you for.
How did we even get on that topic?
We went from inflation is coming down to housing to this. Like we always go on so many.
I think
Microsoft leading us to AOC.
No, but could you imagine if we got drunk?
No.
Bro, we got to do a stream one day when we're drunk. We got to do it.
No,
please
man,
like the stream. Twitters are in the description.
Yeah, guys, hit like, subscribe.
Make sure you follow us. Congrats, Chris, on following.
Can you post Freelancer Finance Discord?
It's in there. I
mean, yeah.
Someone just asked. I saw somebody ask.
I'm still waiting for the video about dividends. We'll talk about dividends probably tomorrow. We'll do a little.
You know who you should, if you really like dividends. I saw a great
I'll
video
admit today I sold my my TFC. Got rid of it.
You did? You mean the spread?
No.
You sold the spread?
The spread. I sold the shares because I'm actually going heavier on Enphase. That's
keeping the spread is good, but the shares, whatever.
The spread I'll keep.
What was it at today? What was it at today?
I don't know, a couple of bucks.
512. The
No,
spread was
spread was
is
up nicely
from
today.
when he
No,
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 the spread was
yeah,
up. I'm
30
talking about
at
the stock price was like 32 something.
Yeah, 32.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's still not
yeah.
not much. It was like I don't know when you guys bought it. I was buying at 29, so it's not.
Yeah.
We got the
Yeah,
spread
yeah.
a little cheaper than that.
The person that you want to if you want to get into dividends, the best person that I could think to get in is what's his name? It's two people: Stephen Fiorello, who's dividend investing,
Oh, yeah.
and number two is Matt Money. Matt Money finally he crossed I think 10K followers, but he did a really great video today on how he's built a portfolio where he literally generates $100 a day passively,
Nice.
which is fucking awesome because
That is great.
that is
3,000 a
what
month is
gives you-
amazing.
that is what gives you financial freedom, dude. Where literally every day you wake up, you got $100 to just blow on whatever you want outside of going to work.
That's
right?
legit, bro. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
All right,
cool.
guys.
Yeah.
All right. Follow Matt. Thank you all for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 p.m. Thank you, everybody. This is a good one. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Later.
Bye.